Okay, good evening. The time is 7:08 p.m. Monday, June 22nd. We're in the White Plains City Council chambers for the Westchester Rent Guidelines Board final meeting. Carol, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your coming tonight. And it's nice to see such a large crowd. I'm very happy to see all of you, and I appreciate your participation in the past. For those people who gave the testimonial, it's very important to us, and we really, on behalf of this board, I really thank you for your time and effort to come before us. Tonight, we will hear, this is the final public meeting of the season. And we're gonna hear the rebuttals to the tenants and the owners to the presentations that they gave before, last time, concerning, rate adjustments for leases commencing or being renewed between October 1st, 2026 and September 30th, 2027. I will now take roll call. Please respond if present. Evelyn Santiago. Present. Natalie Felsenfield. Present. Kenneth Finger.
Here.
Sylvia Hammer. Present. Gregory Smith.
Present.
Tamara Stewart.
Present.
Robert Wiggler.
Present.
And our newest member. Becky.
Present.
Thank you. And my name is Elsa Rubin. I'm a public member and the chair of this board. Let the record show that we have heard. I will now ask our counsel, Mr. Stecker, to see if he has any announcement.
Hi, good evening, Chair. Thank you. I just have one announcement, and it should be a review from anyone who was on the board last year. But last week, this board received an explanatory statement in draft from the Research and Analysis Unit, which goes through first few pages are talking about the guidelines that were set and the record that was developed. The last few pages just go over all of the research material. So this is actually a document that needs to be prepared, finalized, and sent to DHCR by July 1st every year. So if you recall, last year, a combined resolution was made by anyone who was making a resolution for guidelines that directed us to finalize the explanatory statement by putting in the numbers that the board adopts, as well as a recounting of the votes that were taken, and then to send it to the deputy commissioner for ORA by July 1st. So there is a model resolution I've come up with. I can read it into the record if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
So the model resolution says, motion to establish maximum allowable rent guideline adjustments for leases commencing on or after October 1, 2026, on or before September 30, 2027, for all apartments within the board's jurisdiction in the amount of blank percent for 1 year and blank percent for 2-year leases. Further move to adopt the explanatory statement and findings in the form submitted by DHCR staff to the board on June 18, 2026, and to be modified by DHCR staff to reflect the adopted rental adjustments and the voting record from tonight's meeting. Further motion to direct DHCR staff to send the final explanatory statement to the Deputy Commissioner of DHCR's Office of Rent Administration on or before July 1st, 2026, as required by ETPA Section 4. So if anyone makes a resolution tonight for guidelines, which I'm assuming people will, that will be part of what's understood to be part of the resolution.
So once we agreed on the rate guideline, that automatically means that we are in approval of the explain.
Unless anyone has any changes to the explanatory statement, which was sent last week. It's been posted online for the same amount of time as well.
I read them and I have no changes. Does anybody have changes?
No.
Okay, so. In addition to thanking the audience for being here, I want to thank the HRC for the support to this board, the patience and the guidance, because they have been very instrumental throughout the years to lead us in the right path. So, Mr. Stecker and April Workers, thank you. Also, I want to thank the members of this board for your dedication, your commitment, and your passion to this cause. And thank you for all the work that you do, and it's really appreciate it. You serve the Westchester community in a very, very useful way. And our stenographer, thank you for setting up quickly, and we hope to see you again next time. I think that's it, and now we are going to have the people, the owners of the last time, the owners went first on their presentation. This time, the tenants will go first in the rebuttal. You have 10 minutes. You will address this board. I'm gonna ask the public not to interfere in the presentation because they are giving the rebuttal to us, the board. So please don't interrupt, don't interfere, and so that everything goes smoothly. And I will ask Ms. Stewart to start, and please go to the podium since you are going to be talking to us. It's better from over there. So Mr. Speaker, you will keep the time?
Sure, yeah.
10 minutes.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rubin, fellow board members, Councilors Stecker and Huertas, and members of the public. This is the 8th year that I've had the privilege of addressing our board on behalf of tenants, and it feels really good to have a full board again. Welcome, Nick. This board has received a great deal of data, testimony, and information about owner costs, tenant hardship, and the current state of the continuing housing emergency. We have heard from representatives of owner and tenant organizations, business executives, legal service providers, owners, tenants, county legislators, and even a PhD. We thank our colleagues for taking time over the Father's Day weekend to review all of the important information we've received. Before we start the challenging process of deciding the guidelines, Sylvia and I would like to keep a few things in mind. I will briefly address the issues of what information this board should consider, operating versus capital expenses, help for owners, and the plight of tenants. In his presentation, Mr. Figure spent a significant amount of time discussing what information this board should consider, even quoting from the legislative finding of the original version of the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974. I also looked at the ETPA legislative finding, however, the most recent one from June 28, 2019, which states, quote, that preventive action by the legislature continues to be imperative in order to prevent the exaction of unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive rents and rental agreements, and to forestall profiteering, speculation, and other disruptive practices tending to produce threats to the public health, safety, and general welfare. That, in order to prevent uncertainty, hardship, and dislocation, the provisions of this act are necessary and designed to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare, end quote. The emphasis is on. Both editions of the findings agree that the ultimate objective is to transition to a normal free housing market, but with due regard for the existing emergency. Continuing on the issue of consideration, Mr. Finger claimed that, quote, affordability is not a factor in the statute, end quote, and that since there is no empirical data as to affordability, this board cannot legally consider the issue. I respectfully disagree with Ken. In an introduction to the New York City Rent Guidelines Board and the Rent Stabilization System, author Timothy Collins provides a detailed and thoroughly researched history of the New York Rent Stabilization System, which is updated and revised periodically by the staff of the New York City Rent Guidelines Board. The last update having been done in November 2025. In the section titled Main Features of Rent Stabilization, the author states, quote, the rent stabilization system is structured to provide 3 interrelated protections to tenants while permitting a fair return to owners who invest in rental property. A prime concern of lawmakers in establishing the system was to preserve the basic affordability of rental housing, end quote. The affordability section of the document is 11 pages long and clearly supports consideration of affordability in guidelines decisions. Quote, the findings of the City Council in enacting the Rent Stabilization Law of 1969 and the state legislature in adopting the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974 clearly established that fair and generally affordable rents are a primary objective of these laws. The intent is clearly not to guarantee an affordable rent for every tenant. Rather, it is to protect tenants against abnormal rents driven up by chronic housing shortages, end quote. Mr. Collins then confirms this board's experience that, quote, the question of how much weight to give to affordability is a controversial one, end quote. Tenant representatives argue that affordability should be considered, while owner representatives argue that affordability should not. According to Timothy Collins, quote, 2 judicial pronouncements on the issue indicate that tenants' ability to pay is a permissible consideration in setting the guidelines. Regardless of who has the better of this argument, there is an independent and quite plausible reason for continuing to review and factor affordability into the guidelines. In the purest economic sense, the object of the guidelines should be to eliminate the effects of the housing shortage on rent levels. End quote. Finally and importantly, quote, housing options in the middle and low income markets are limited. Owners are commonly in a position to say, take it or leave it, and tenants have little choice but to accept what is offered. The benefit to low and moderate income tenants of a recession-induced inflation of rents is largely lost. In short, a genuine attempt to simulate a competitive equilibrium rental price will recognize that rents fall in a recession because incomes fall. From this perspective, ability to pay may be an important economic factor for the board to consider. End quote. Mr. Finger also spends a considerable amount of time arguing that because many owners have mortgages, rent increases should factor in capital considerations like mortgage interest and depreciation. This argument has been made repeatedly over the years by owners and their representatives. Genevieve Roche's June 12th written submission clearly addresses the difference between operating expenses, which affect all owners, and capital costs, which vary significantly from one owner to the next. Sylvia and I ask you to remember that we are the only rent guidelines board that treats debt service as an above-the-line operating expense, when in fact it is a capital expense, not an operating expense. Only about half of the owners have mortgages. In terms of those mortgages, varies based on each owner's individual circumstances. Some mortgages are for the building itself or improvements to the building with the mortgage, while other mortgages may have been taken for the owner to purchase or improve other properties. Why should tenants pay when owners speculate in real estate? Or when an owner decides to refinance to adjust cash flow? Why should one set of tenants pay for another building's improvements? Tenants have no say in these capital decisions by owners, nor do tenants share in the profits should an investment pay off. Sylvia and I believe that our board would focus our attention on operating income, which lend themselves year over year, apples to apples comparisons. We've heard repeatedly that the guideline increases passed by this board are the only way owners can improve their bottom line since HSTPA was passed in 2019. Owners have called HSTPA a disaster, said that it would bankrupt them, and that Westchester County would soon look like the South Bronx in the 1970s. Owners said that without vacancy bonuses, MCIs, and IAIs, they wouldn't be able to turn a profit and wouldn't make any improvements. Much of that fear mongering has proven to be untrue. While major capital improvement projects are not as frequent in recent years, it's unclear how much of that reduction was due to COVID-related construction delays and or increased costs due to tariffs and supply chain disruptions, as opposed to being the result of the passage of HSTPA. 7 years into the implementation of HSTPA. I run that on time.
No, somebody else's.
So,
Yes, may I interrupt?
sure.
I'm gonna respectfully ask the audience to please silence your phones or any alarms that you have, so that we don't get interrupted here. Thank you.
Okay.
Please continue.
7 years into the implementation of HSTPA, the cost to income ratio or net operating income calculated by the stats team shows that owners only have slightly less income left after expenses now than they did in 2019, which is 35.69% now versus 37.81% in 2019. While it is true that owners can no longer collect a 20% vacancy bonus every time an apartment turns over, and major capital improvements, CIs, are now capped at 2% per year for 30 years, where they had previously been capped at 6% or 15% per year in perpetuity. The legislature listened to owners' concerns and amended the rules in 2024 to create 2 tiers for individual apartment improvements, IAIs, so that owners can recover up to $30,000 for first tier IAIs and up to $50,000 for second tier IAIs. Additional help is available for building owners with 50 or fewer units through DHCR Small Building Owners Assistance Unit. This unit provides eligible owners with information and assists them with rent registration, rent increase forms, lease renewal procedures, MCI applications, and DHCR applications for hardship rent increases. DHCR can also grant struggling owners comparative and alternative hardship rent adjustments when warranted, and will even help owners complete the application. Westchester County is also stepping in to help owners preserve affordable housing through the establishment of a $10 million affordable housing preservation and rehabilitation initiative in this year's budget. This initiative assists property owners with capital improvements and repairs. We hope that owners will avail themselves of these additional ways to maintain their buildings and improve their bottom lines. This year's state budget has the potential to provide some much needed assistance to senior citizens and disabled persons. The statewide maximum income cap for the senior citizen rent increase exemption, SRE, and disability rent increase exemption, DRE, has been raised from $50,000 to $75,000, making more rent stabilized tenants eligible to participate in the 2 programs. Each participating municipality in Westchester will need to opt in to a higher income threshold for eligible tenants to benefit from the change. And Sylvia and I ask our colleagues to help us encourage municipalities with rent stabilization to increase their income thresholds to help struggling tenants. We also ask owners to encourage potentially eligible tenants to apply for screening period. The rent freeze helps the approved tenants, and the associated tax abatement makes owners whole, so it's a win-win situation. Unfortunately, far too many rent stabilized tenants aren't eligible for screen or tree, and they are struggling to survive. Many of the working class are working multiple jobs, taking in roommates, skipping meals, stretching medication, visiting food pantries, donating blood and plasma, deferring car repairs, and running up credit cards, trying to keep up with expenses growing faster. I know people who are regulars on soup kitchen and food pantry lines, parents who have to choose between food and diapers, kids who gratefully go to the library for free breakfast during the summer, folks who ration paper products, and people who are playing Russian roulette with their health by delaying trips to the doctor because of the copay. I've heard owners say that they need a 1-year guideline adjustment of 4.2% to balance their increased costs. But too many of the people Sylvia and I represent truly cannot afford to pay that much more than they're already paying for rent. Please remember that the legislative finding says that action continues to be necessary in order to prevent uncertainty, hardship, and dislocation, and that protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. The current rate of inflation is hurting all of our bottom lines. However, most rent stabilized tenants aren't fortunate enough to have anywhere near the material resources that most owners have. The 4.2% 1-year rent increase that owners are requesting places the burden of making the owners whole entirely on the shoulders of tenants. And that large increase would undoubtedly create uncertainty, hardship, and dislocation of tenants, while endangering the public health, safety, and general welfare. Therefore, Sylvia and I are respectfully asking this board to approve increases of 1% for 1 year, 1.5% for 2-year lease renewal. Both owners and tenants should share in the current economic pain in proportion to their means and ability. And these suggested increases acknowledge that tenants are willing to help. While owners dismiss and disparage modest increases like the 1% and 1.5% that we are suggesting, these modest increases represent real dollars that retired seniors, disabled people, single individuals, and working families will have to come up with to remain housed. We acknowledge the need for tenants and owners to work together to address the current housing affordability crisis. And we believe that those who have more should bear more of the burden. Please protect rent-stabilized tenants from even greater housing insecurity by passing 1% for 1-year lease renewals and 1.5% for 2-year lease. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Yes.
We were talking about the street and drain, that they up the limitations, which is great. You said that each municipality has to adopt.
Correct.
Have any of them adopted it?
I think that since the state budget was passed late, things are still kind of working their way through the system. So I don't know that it's necessarily gotten to the local municipal level yet.
And each one has to adopt.
But as with everything else with rent stabilization, whenever some municipalities might decide to go from 50 to 60 or from 50 to 55. Some of them did never adopted the 50. So some municipalities are below the 50. That was the old threshold. So it's really up to individual municipalities to decide. And therefore, it's really important that people lobby the local municipalities to get them to increase it so that more people get to participate.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
So it was my impression that anything that is passed by the state represents some minimum that municipalities would have to do. So you're saying that there are municipalities that have lower standards than what is set up by the state.
When it comes to ETCA and the income threshold, That has always been something that is decided, just like opting into ETPA is decided municipality by municipality. Each municipality also has the ability and the right to decide what the maximum threshold is, because it's the municipality that has to provide the tax abatement. So they have a say in what they're willing to do based on, who's there, how many people, how much they think that it's gonna cost. So that's why that is.
Anybody else? There are no more questions. I will ask, the owners, who is going to be the, is the winner? Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, fellow board members, members of the public, and all those participating in this process. First, I want to thank the members of the Westchester County Red Line Guideline Board for their service. This is difficult, emotional, and important work, and it is an honor to serve with you. I want to also thank Ms. Sylvia Hammer for her presentation. It was comprehensive, thoughtful, and moving. I do not question the sincerity of her remarks, nor I dismiss the seriousness of the housing insecurity she described. In fact, I share many of her concerns. Housing insecurity is real in Westchester County, across New York State, and across the nation. The economy is putting pressure on families from every direction. Food, insurance, utilities, healthcare, transportation, and basic living costs have all become more difficult for many people to manage. I do not minimize them, but recognizing the hardships tenants face does not mean we should ignore the financial reality of the buildings themselves that house them. That is where I respectfully disagree with Ms. Hammer's recommendation. Ms. Hammer recommended a 1% increase for 1-year leases and a 1.5% increase for 2-year lease renewals. I cannot support that recommendation. Those numbers may sound compassionate, but in my view, they do not meet the responsibility that this board has been given. We're not here simply to express sympathy. We are here to make a serious judgment about what is required to preserve the financial health of rent stabilized buildings, while also taking into consideration tenant affordability. The balance does matter. We are bound by the oath that we accepted that we swore to when we accepted this responsibility. We're also bound by statute to make recommendations and decisions that make sense, that are grounded in the record before us, and that balance the interests we are required to consider. We do not have the luxury of voting only from emotions, pressure, politics, or sympathy for one side of the equation or the other. Our responsibility is broader than that. We must consider tenants, but we also must consider the condition, the economics, and long-term viability of the properties that house these tenants. If we ignore either side of that equation, we fail in our duty. We must consider tenants, but we must also recognize that landlords cannot be expected to solve every economic, social, and housing problem before us. Landlords did not create inflation. Landlords did not create the affordable housing shortage. Landlords did not create rising healthcare costs, food costs, insurance costs, utility costs, or the broader economic pressure facing families across the county. Property owners have serious responsibilities, but they cannot be asked to carry the entire burden of much larger affordability crisis by themselves. If buildings cannot keep up with rising expenses, housing is not preserved. If owners cannot pay their bills, maintain their properties, absorb health absorb insurance increases, fund repairs, and meet debt obligations. The result is not better housing for tenants. The result is deferred maintenance, weaker buildings, less investment, more financial stress, and eventually fewer stable housing options. This is not theory. This is a practical reality of real estate ownership. I've spent more than 40 years in real estate finance. I have reviewed income and expense statements, rent rolls, mortgage obligations, cash flow projections, underwriting models, and loan performance for a very long time. In my opinion, too long. I understand the difference between a political talking point and an actual income and expense analysis. And from my perspective, and from that, I believe some of the arguments being made against any meaningful, and I underline meaningful, rent increase are not only wrong, but misleading. One of the most troubling arguments we hear year after year comes from Ms. Schroesch, who continues to assert that the landlords represented in this process are enjoying a 35% profit margin on their buildings. I strongly reject this assertion. It's like if we keep on hearing it every year, we're going to believe it. It's going to come to be true. It's simply incorrect. It misstates the facts and reflects the fundamental misunderstood understanding of how building economics on the ground, never mind in Albany, but on the ground, debt and debt service and real world ownership costs and work. The claim is based on a flawed and realistic way of looking at building economics. It treats the financial picture as if interest payments, principal payments, mortgage obligations, and real world debt service is not a matter when measuring a return on investment or a owner's economics. That is not how real estate works. That is not how lenders underwrite these buildings, making them available for purchase. That is not how investors evaluate properties. That is not how owners determine whether it's a building that's financially healthy. You cannot simply look at income, subtract selected expenses, ignore debt service, ignore capital needs, ignore reserve requirements, ignore principal and interest obligations, and then call what remains profit. That is not profit in any practical sense. It is a distorted number. There are major differences between paper operating income and actual cash available to an owner after all obligations are meant to put in their pockets. This is a major difference between a building that appears profitable on a narrow worksheet and building that must pay its mortgage, insurance, taxes, payroll, utilities, repairs, legal costs, and capital improvements. When those realities are ignored, the conclusion is not just incomplete, it is false. So when I hear repeated claims that owners are enjoying a 35% profit margin, I have to say clearly, this is not a credible representation of how these buildings operate. Maybe politically convenient, but it's not financially accurate. Board cannot base its decision on a number that excludes major real world obligations. The same problem exists in the comments and analysis submitted by the Mamaroneck Coalition for Affordable Housing. I believe their presentation may be well founded and intentioned, but is wrong in several important ways. Their first argument appears to be that because cash flow has remained relatively stable over the past few years, a rent freeze or a very low increase is justified. But that ignores the obvious point. Cash flow remained relatively stable because the board approved rent increases in prior years. That is not proof that increases are unnecessary. It is proof that prior increases help prevent the numbers from getting worse. If expenses go up every year and rents do not go up in a regulated market, the math does not take care of itself. The gap widens, property weakens, and the owner has less ability to maintain the building. It's the same story. That is my opinion. That is not an opinion. That is simple arithmetic. We have heard from HCR that expenses have continued to rise. Recent years, most expense categories increase. In the most recent year, the year-over-year increase in expenses was reported at was reported at approximately 4.2%. That number matters. At 1% or 1.5% increase does not come close to addressing that expense growth. It leaves owners absorbing the difference, and while tenant advocates may say owners should simply absorb it, that is not a serious long-term policy preserving regulated housing. At some point, numbers matter. Their second argument about cost to income ratio is also misleading. They point to the high water mark from 1987 and compare it to today as if it tells the whole story. It does not. The year 1987 was an outlier. It was a period of major financial disruption, including the savings and loan crisis and the stock market crash. Using that year as a benchmark, what should be considered normal is not serious analysis. That actual data shows variation from year to year. It does not support the simplified narrative that today's buildings are sitting comfortably at historical level of financial strength. Their third argument is perhaps the most important one to correct. They suggest that the market is somehow setting rents in rent stabilized buildings, and that therefore the board does not need to approve a meaningful increase. That is simply wrong. These apartments are not operating in a free market. They are operating in a regulated market. That market does not set the rents. The board does. That is the entire reason we are here.
Yes. Okay, you can have a few minutes to wrap up.
Thank you. Under rent stabilization, property owners do not have the same ability to reset rents upon vacancy or rely on board movement to offset rising costs. The annual guideline increases approved by this board are primary mechanism to which owners can increase income in response to rising expenses. So it's incorrect to say that something else will take care of math. There is no something else. There is a board, and there is a vote, and that number will be approved. If expenses rise more than 4% and the board approves increases of only 1 and 1.5%, we are not balancing the interests of tenants and owners. We are shifting the burden almost entirely onto the owners. That may be politically appealing to some, but it does not balance. I'm going to skip the $10 million affordable housing rehabilitation and preventions initiative. That's in my comments. You can read them. I think they're pretty self-explanatory and it kind of addresses the issue. So I'm going to go directly to my closing. Therefore, it is simply incorrect to suggest that this program can offset rising operating costs to justify a minimal rent increase today. The board must base its decision on the actual financial realities facing ETPA properties, not on the possibility of future funding that may never become available. I want to address another misconception that often enters this discussion, that landlord representatives here in Westchester do not represent Wall Street commercial real estate investments. That the landlord representatives here in Westchester do not represent Wall Street real estate investment firms. That may be the image some people want to create, but that is not the reality of many owners that we are talking about. In many cases, we're talking about small business owners. Yes, small business owners. Our job is not to punish owners. Our job is not to ignore tenants. Our job is not to choose one side, disregard the other. Our job is to preserve regulated housing by making sure the system remains financially viable. There is no tenant protection if the body of the buildings themselves are financially weakened. There is no affordability if owners cannot maintain the properties. There is no long-term housing stability if the operating model is slowly made unsustainable. Supporting a meaningful rent increase does not mean a lack of compassion for tenants. It does not mean we are blind to housing insecurity. It does not mean that we do not care about seniors, working families, veterans, or people living paycheck to paycheck. We do, but compassion cannot replace math. That is a good outcome. We need a good outcome for tenants or owners. We need to look at the full picture, and the full picture is this. Tenants are under pressure, owners are under pressure, expenses have gone up, insurance has gone up, utilities have gone up, repairs and maintenance have gone up, the cost of capital has gone up, and the buildings are regulated. The market does not solve the income side. And in my view, it does not satisfy the balancing responsibility this board has been taking tasked with, and I'm referring to the increases proposed for 1.5%, 1.5%.
So with that, are you gonna,
I'm wrapping it up.
thank you.
For those reasons, I respectfully disagree with Ms. Hannah's recommendation and with the analysis offered by those who argue for a freeze or a nominal increase. We believe this board should adopt increases that more honestly reflect the actual cost pressures facing rent stabilized properties while remaining mindful of tenant affordability. Specifically, I support a guideline increase of 4.2% for one-year lease renewals and 5.25% for two-year lease renewals. These figures are grounded in the expense data before us, recognize the financial realities facing housing providers, and remain consistent with our statutory obligation to balance tenant affordability with the long-term preservation of the housing sector. This is the balance we are appointed to consider. This is the oath that we took. That is statutory responsibility we are required to uphold it. And that is the vote we believe, I believe, and we believe best serves the long-term interests of both tenants and property owners of Westchester County. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please say at the podium?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Or comments? No? Thank you.
Thank you for your
Sure.
ability to go over. Thank you.
So if there are no questions, we will proceed now to the people, members of the board, who want to give the recommendation.
Also, for the record, that was last year's increase was.
Last year was 3,
Last year
2
was
and 3,
2% for 1 year and 3% for 2 years.
yes.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? 2% 1 year, 3% 2 years.
2% for
1 year.
1 year and 3 for 3.
3%.
Yes. So, anybody wants to?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
go ahead.
On behalf of the landlord, we would propose an increase of 4.2% for 1 year lease renewals, and 5.25% for 2 year lease renewals, commencing October 1st, 2026, through to September 30th, 2027.
Anybody second?
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen, you want to restate the motion?
Sure, so that was a motion, 4.2% for 1 year leases. And 5.25% for 2 year leases, this would also include the approval of the explanatory statement as well. This is, made by Ken Finger, seconded by Robert Withers. Would you like me to call it roll, Chair?
Yes, please.
Ken Finger,
Yes.
Robert Withers,
Aye.
Gregory Smith.
Right.
Evelyn Santiago,
Right.
Evelyn Santiago,
Nay.
Natalie Felsenfeld,
Nay.
Nick Becky,
Nay.
Tamara Stewart,
No.
Sylvia Hamer,
No.
and Chair Rubin.
No,
And that fails by a vote of 2 to 7.
next person?
Wait.
Yes,
But 1 year will be 3.5 and 2 years will be 4.5.
anybody second?
I'll second it. Third.
Mr. Secretary, would you?
Sure, the motion to restate was made by Gregory Smith, seconded by Kim Finger. 3.5% for 1 year leases, 4.5% for 2 year leases, adoption of explanatory statement as well. Would you like me to call the roll, Chair?
Yes, please.
Gregory Smith,
Alright,
Ken Finger,
yes.
Robert Withers,
Aye.
Tamara Stewart,
No.
Sylvia Hamer,
No.
Natalie Felsenfeld,
No.
Sorry, didn't hear that.
No.
Evelyn Santiago,
No.
Nick Becky,
Aye.
and Chair Rubin.
Yes.
Alright.
That motion does pass by a vote of 5-4.
Thank you. So I believe that is that concludes the business of this meeting.
Can you repeat the percentage, please? 3.5% for 1 year, 4.5% for 2 year.
Mr. Stecker, would you reinstate for the audience?
Sure.
And who made the motion and who second?
So the motion was, 3.5% for 1-year leases, 4.5% for 2-year leases. Motion made by Gregory Smith, seconded by Ken Finger. Votes in favor were Chair Rubin, Gregory Smith, Nick Becky, Ken Finger, and Robert Withers. The rest of the board voting against, so that carried by a vote of 5-4.
Thank you. Thank you. This concludes the business of this meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.